just to kind of give me an idea of what you guys are working on, I recognize several of you as computer science majors, so who is not computer science in here? And what are your majors?
Math.
Data science.
Chemistry. Math.
Okay. Okay, nice combination. And whose plan here is to go from college into the workforce? Okay, into graduate school? Okay, so I'm going to present to the three of you. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, okay, so that gives me an idea of what we're working with. Excellent. So my name is Tim. For those of you that don't know me, I work in the Career Development Center. I'm the career coach for the College of Science and Technology. I'm also a therapist. That's my job outside of here. A little bit about me. My undergraduate degree is in finance. I worked in banking for several years, and after that I did some analytical work. I hated it. I thought I would love it, and I didn't. So I went back to school. I got my master's degree in counseling. That allows me to do this work. I got my license as an LPC, which allows me to be a therapist, and I do some volunteer work with teenage boys who are part of the CPS system, so like drug abuse, anger management, stuff like that. So I can't help you guys with that stuff. We have other counselors here on campus. But anything career-related or school-related for your next step, that's what I'm here to do. So today, we're going to talk about personal statements. So I know this is probably going to be a lot more applicable to some of you guys than to others. But any of you at any point who are considering going into like a PhD program or a master's program, you'll have to write a personal statement. It is a requirement. A really good personal statement can help push your application over the top. And a really poor written personal statement, destroys your application because it's a giant red flag to the committees reading your application that you don't know how to communicate well in written format. So it's critical to have one, I think, a good one. So yeah, so hopefully by the end of today's presentation, you'll have an understanding of what a personal statement is and how to at least start writing one. And again, one of the aspects of my job is to help you guys write them. When it comes to syntax, diction, punctuation, spelling, I'm not the greatest at any of those. But when it comes to extracting content from your life to make a really good personal statement, I can help with all that stuff. We do have a very good writing center here on the 9th floor, and so when it comes to your sentence structure, they can probably service you a little bit better than I can. But if you just feel like, hey, I'm missing content, I can help you with that part. So the biggest question with a personal statement is what an audience is looking for. Any ideas? I see like a half hand, so I'm going to pick on you.
Sure.
So what are they looking for?
Like who I am.
Yeah, okay, that's part of what they're looking for. Anything else?
Your accomplishments.
Yeah, your accomplishments,
Your future goals.
future goals. Excellent.
Your interest.
Yeah, your interests. Remember, guys,
Why did you choose that career?
well, and why you're choosing the program that you're applying to, right? So if you're applying to like a data science master's program, they're going to want to know, like, why did you pick our college? And generally, most colleges will give you a prompt. And they'll say in 5,000 characters, tell us about yourself and tell us why you picked this program. If you don't answer the prompt, obviously that's an issue. We'll get to that later. But they're looking for all sorts of things. Really what they're looking for in a personal statement is an introduction of yourself to them. Remember, they're looking at your application for their school and they're judging you completely based on what they see on paper, right? They don't know you, they don't know you from the next person. All they see is what's in the application. And if the application doesn't tell the right story, then they don't move you on to the interview portion of the application process. And so really what they're looking for is an introduction to you that is personal, that allows them to get to know you a little bit, that allows them to envision themselves working with you in your program. The two biggest errors I see with personal statements with students, one is sometimes they're really boring, right? If you have a boring personal statement, especially if it's 5,000 characters, they don't want to read the whole thing. They're not going to get to the end. It's boring, I don't want to read it. The second biggest error is you'll have a student will have 4 to 6 sort of separate thoughts or separate concepts in a personal statement, and it doesn't flow. It's like each paragraph is a standalone aspect of your life, and there's nothing that transitions one paragraph to the next. And so being able to tackle both of those, I think, goes a long way to making a really solid personal statement. And again, I can help you guys with that. These are the things that they're looking for typically, and this holds true for graduate school applications, for jobs, for internships. These 8 are really what employers are assessing and graduate schools are assessing when they ask you interview questions and when they look through your applications. So it's important to kind of be able to highlight a lot of this stuff, especially that communication piece, when you write these types of documents. And if anybody wants a copy of this presentation, you'll be able to use these links just as some resources for personal statements. All three of these are excellent, especially the first two. It kind of gives you a timeline for graduate school applications when you should be doing different things. Also, speaking of timelines, that reminds me. I passed out something for you guys at the very beginning. One is a 4-year checklist. I know several of you are seniors, but for everyone who's not a senior, or if you're a senior and you feel like you're missing something throughout your academic life here, this kind of just gives you a checklist of what you should be doing every year to prepare yourself for getting the job that you want. So if you feel like something's missing, let me know. I'm happy to dig into that with you. The other one, the little quarter sheet, is a flyer for an event that we're having on Sunday at JCPenney. We usually have this once a year. We partner with them, and they give a 60% discount for like professional clothing to our students. So if you feel like you do need professional clothing for any like conferences or interviews or career fairs or anything like that, this is a great place to get some at a discount. Oh yeah, so this is a little thing that's in here. You are special. Sometimes students sit down with me and they feel like, or they'll say something like, you know, I have all these ideas, but I'm just an average person, average student. How am I going to write a personal statement that makes me special? And I promise you guys, you are. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of work to get there. You know, it's weird to kind of like talk about yourself, you know, because we're not taught to do that in a non-narcissistic social media sort of way, right? Like we can check in at the parties we go to, at all the different grocery stores we're at, and tell people the cupcakes that we bought, whatever. But when you're asked to talk about yourself in a professional way or a personal way for a graduate school application, for whatever reason, it's very challenging. If you think about writing a personal statement, all the writing that you've done in school thus far is really focused on two things. It's focused on analytical writing, like critical thinking, that type of stuff, and then scientific or technical writing. It's not focused on personal writing. So don't feel bad if you don't know where to start. Again, that's something I can help you guys with, okay? So next week, the presentation is on CVs. So just a question to you guys, what do they have in common, a CV and a personal statement?
Your accomplishments?
Yeah, same answer as before. Accomplishments. Potentially.
You're introducing whatever you have done so far in both of them. So you're giving a little introduction in yourself and what you have done so far until the moment that you go to the graduate school.
Excellent. Any other
I
answers?
have one more. You have to answer why you chose that program, or why you like in the case of a cover letter, or why you're choosing that career in that company.
Potentially. A little different on a CV, but that is something that you can convey in a CV. Yeah. So you guys are both right. So with CVs, it's a little different than a resume. We're going to get a lot more into this next week. A resume is typically one page of relevant content for a job you're applying to. It should only be one page, and it should only contain relevant content. A CV, to back to y'all's points, can really introduce yourself in a different way. Like sometimes you can put research interests on there, you can put presentations you've been to, conferences you've been to, and that information wouldn't necessarily show up on a resume. Same thing with a personal statement. You can include a lot more personal stuff than you ever would on a resume, similar to a CV. So the biggest question, of course, is where do you start? For me, I think the best place to start, and this is back to the timeline links I showed you a couple slides ago, is looking at whatever the requirements for the schools you're trying to get into are. You know, some schools will have a very sort of ambiguous personal statement sort of format they require, and just give us one page about why you're choosing our program. And that's the only sort of indication of what they're looking for. That can be kind of challenging for some people. Other programs are going to give you a much more detailed sort of like, we need this, these 5 prompts covered in a personal statement. So I think a good place to start is looking at that first. The second place to start, if you feel like I have no idea how to start this document, is to use our services or work with your faculty mentors. Like any member of faculty here, I promise you, has had to write a personal statement at some point in their life. Some of them have probably had to write more than one. They're an excellent resource when it comes to starting these documents. Our writing center is another place to start. Let's see, from this slide, I think that the last two, researching the school and the organization, this is important. Sometimes students will just, they'll write kind of like a general personal statement that they think will apply to every school, and that's not the case. Schools, especially like master's programs, PhD programs, they want to know that you picked them for a reason. So the more you know about the faculty that teaches in those programs, and the more you know about the specific goals of those programs, the more thorough and complete you can make your document. Because you can reference that stuff as you write to the program. They want to feel special, you know? And if they feel like you're giving the same personal statement to every single program, it's going to do the opposite of that. It's not going to feel feel special. And that starts with researching them. And then the last piece, of course, is just identifying the experiences that you've had that have led you to that profession, led you to that school, and linking them back to the specific things the school is asking for in a personal statement. So we kind of covered most of this. There's one link at the bottom that's incredibly helpful, and that's the Purdue OWL. They have a very, very good writing center, and they have a lot of their content online. It's all free, just for anyone who wants to use it. And they have lots of samples there of resumes, cover letters, and of course personal statements. So using that resource, I think, is a good place to start, along with everything else that I mentioned. So personal statement. So what is it? So it's a picture of you. It's an invitation for the program, the committee, to get to know you better. Of course, it's an indication of your priorities and your judgment. And last, it's a story, or more precisely, your story. I'm going to read. I'll take a break from the slides for a second. I'm going to read to you guys. I have two personal statements here. I have a good one and I have a not good one. Which one do you want me to start with?
Not good one.
Yeah, always, right? That's always feedback I get. Okay. To give you a little feedback, this is a personal statement that was written for an English program, so not exactly what you guys are going to write for, but I think you'll still be able to pick up on it. Only the very weak-minded refuse to be influenced by literature and poetry, quote unquote. I feel that this quote reflects my own thirst for knowledge, and that's why I've had a love of reading from a young age. Right from the time I could read The Very Hungry Caterpillar. These days, my literary interests are rather more sophisticated. After all, there's nothing like Ulysses to show off one's superior intelligence when indulging in my favorite activity, reading, in a coffee shop. I'm never happier than when I'm reading. That's why I went to study English language and literature at Oxford. That and the G&T's ice cream, parentheses, jokes, exclamation point. Oddly enough, it was actually the film 10 Things I Hate About You that made me decide for sure that I wanted to study English. All my friends kept saying how much I remind them of Julie Stiles in that film and her passion for poetry. It's true, I do adore poetry, and I have won quite a few awards for my own poems, and everyone says how good they are. Poets I especially admire include John Keats, Sylvia Plath, William Wordsworth, and several more. I love novels too, my favorites being Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, and Lord of the Rings. I'm not a one-trick pony though. I also enjoy history, especially the Edwardians, as I'm a big fan of Downton Abbey. This show has given me an interest in the First World War, and as we see its impact on the Crawley family, it seems especially pertinent to be thinking about the First World War in this centenary year. I am best in my class for all subjects, so I think I fit right in at Oxford. When I'm writing an essay, I have a steely determination to get the best grade, not unlike a hunter whose only thought is to catch the biggest, most impressive stag he can set his sights on. My AS grade in history wasn't as good as I would have liked, but my teachers say that was because I got sidetracked by spending too much time reading and writing poetry. I love to study at the university, and it's my joint favorite subject with English. When I'm not winning poetry competitions or reading sophisticated books in my local cafe, I enjoy socializing with my mates and going to the cinema. I'm applying for deferred entry as I'm having a gap year, period, smiley face. So that's it. So what did you guys see that was wrong with that personal statement?
I have a couple. Can I say?
Yeah, certainly.
First, she was talking a lot. I text about herself. Like, okay, it's a personal statement, but you don't use the what is it called? The word I. Only. Yeah. And then also she was going jumping from one situation to another, and just, you lose the focus. Sometimes she's going to the cinema, and then the other, she's talking about some other stuff. I think she involved a lot of really personal things which are not related to her career goals. And I think, she said so many bad things about her.
I saw another hand over here.
Yes, well, you said the smiley face at the end, and there was a part about one-trick pony. And also the fact that she included the flaws inside in the person's statement to really ensure her confidence, their confidence.
Okay. So a hand over here.
Oh, it's just she used informal language in the personal statement, and then her ideas kind of scatter a lot, and also something about like her teacher, history teacher talk about like she not focusing on class, so it should not be there.
Yeah, it's more
Definitely.
the not invoking confidence. Okay, any other feedback on this personal statement?
I think at one point, I don't know if it's a guy or girl, but they said that all their friends said their poetry is good or something like that. I don't think you can just say that.
Yeah, we need to ask them to back it up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And this is hard for me to read because you guys can't see it, but there's so many like spelling and grammatical errors that it's tough for me to
man.
read. So here's some of the things she did wrong. She started with a quote, and not only just a quote, but a very pretentious quote. After that, she had some cliches. Cliches are like, you're going to see this later in the slide presentation, they're like a kiss of death in a personal statement. They show a lack of creativity, they show a lack of individuality, and really you're just stealing what someone else said and we've all been saying for a long time. Cliche is very bad. Questionable motives, jokes and slang, Hollywood inspiration, unnamed awards, like your friends saying your poetry is great and you win all these awards. What are the awards you're winning? And this is one that I think is really, really bad. She talks about history several times being her favorite subject, but she's applying for a graduate course in English. Like, why would you do that to the committee? They're immediately going to question in their mind whether or not you're going to be committed to their program. If we, as a committee, know you love poetry and English, or we know you love poetry and history, like, why would I accept you into an English program? You're going to be here for a semester, you're going to realize it's not for you, and you're going to leave. I'd rather give that spot to someone who truly wants to be here. Outside of that, bragging, negativity, which you guys talked about, boring interests, an unexplained gap here, the smiley face, and then of course the grammar links, the typos, the odd spacing, which you guys couldn't see. So lots of errors in here. Okay, so this one is kind of long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read the opening paragraph. So this is a good one. So this is a personal statement for dental school, actually. I could hardly keep myself from staring at the girl. The right side of her face was misshapen and bigger than the left. Only later did I notice that Cheryl, about 9 at the time, had light brown hair, lively brown eyes, and a captivating smile. When she walked into the candy shop where I worked 6 years ago, Cheryl told me she was a student of my former 4th grade teacher with whom I had kept in contact. We talked, then spent time talking each time she visited. She became a very special friend of mine, one whom I admire greatly. At the time we met, I was taking honors and AP classes, working about 20 hours a week, and feeling sorry for myself. Cheryl's outgoing confidence and good cheer put my situation in perspective. Cheryl was strong, kind, and surprisingly hopeful. She never focused on her facial deformities, but always on the anticipated improvement in her appearance. Her ability to find strength within herself inspired me to become a stronger person and motivated me to pursue a career where I could help those like Cheryl attain the strength that she possesses. At the time, my initial interest turned towards psychology. Impressed with Cheryl's outlook, I overlooked the source of her strength. She knew that treatment will improve her appearance. Focusing on the emotional aspect of her illness, I volunteered at the Neuropsychiatric Institute. There, I supervised the daily activities of pre-adolescents, played with them, and assisted them in getting dressed. I worked with crack babies, autistic children, and children who had severe behavioral problems. I enjoyed interacting with children, but I often became frustrated that I was not able to help them. For instance, a young autistic boy frequently hit himself. No one was permitted to stop this child. We had to turn away and allow him to continually strike and hurt himself until he was tired. Man, that's a pretty good introduction, right? Man, do you guys want to hear more? Is that how good it is? Yes? Okay, I'll read the rest. I was increasingly disappointed with the lack of progress I saw in my volunteer work at NPI, but my job again pushed me in the right direction. During the fall quarter of my junior year in college, I left the candy shop where I had worked for nearly 5.5 years, and I began working as a senior clerk in the anesthesiology residency program. Ironically, work which frequently made study difficult helped me find the right path. There I learned about the oral and maxillofacial specialty, which will help allow me to help people like Cheryl. To explore my interest in dentistry, I volunteered as a dental assistant in Dr. Miller's dental office. Dr. Miller introduced me to various dental techniques. Although I was mainly an observer, I had the opportunity to interact with patients. I came in contact with a diverse patient population with different problems and different dental needs. I observed as Dr. Miller dealt with each patient individually and treated each one to the best of his ability. He got me familiar with strategies for oral health promotion and disease prevention. learned a great deal from him, and as a result, my interest in dentistry grew. I chose to pursue a career in dentistry after following a circuitous path. My friendship with Cheryl motivated me to enter a field where I could help the severely disfigured cope with their condition. Although I initially turned to psychology, I found my work with Neuropsychiatric Institute to be frustrating and was searching for a different way to achieve my goal. Ironically, Cheryl had told me all along the source of her strength, the knowledge that her condition was treatable and improving. Through maxillofacial dentistry, I will help others with serious facial deformities have the same knowledge, the source of strength. It's good, right? Thank you. So what did you guys like about that one?
The way you read it.
I have a good speaking voice, thank you.
It's like with so much passion, like you really liked it.
Yeah.
Well, it's all,
The other one you made it so boring, like
well, and that's not me making it boring, that's the way that it was written. In the other one, there's lots of grammatical,
It was
spelling,
actually-
incomplete sentences, which makes it hard to read. And the lesson there, if you guys turn in a personal statement to a committee and it's hard for them to read it, that's how it's going to sound, boring and incomplete. You know, but if you turn in one that sounds great, then that's how it's going to sound, right? Complete, like an introduction. Like I feel like I really know Cheryl and I really know the young lady who wrote this just through a personal statement, right? So what else did you guys like about that one? The good one, huh? Oh, more, okay.
I liked how like I was lost at the beginning when he was talking about that girl. So it was like putting my imagination like, you know, far away, like trying to describe, like when he was describing the person, I was trying to picture her. And then when he started like telling the story and then revealing it, it was like you know, like a soap opera. You know, you start with the end, but then you don't know the beginning or whatever is going in the background. So it was really good, and also I think he wasn't repeating words, or his language was sounding really good, and it's like a harmony. And I think I forgot it, but
Okay, good.
So I just have a question. Is it too much about Cheryl in the story? Like,
No, not at all. And the reason why not is, remember, personal statements are an introduction to the committee to understand why you're choosing that path, right? And so the very first component of a really good personal statement, we call it a hook. And it hooks the reader into wanting to read more. Like you read that first paragraph and you're hearing about the candy shop, you're hearing about this relationship, you're hearing about the writer's desire to help people with some sort of informality, right? And you're